Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Jeff, I was sad to read about your retirement, and you're not even my police chief.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's I was sad to do it. So, I can honestly say that I'm going out on a high note and not leaving because I need to or have to. It's just I'm getting old, and after 44 years in law enforcement, I said, I got to pull the plug at some point.
I know, but you'll miss the people.
Absolutely will.
I found the thing I didn't expect was to miss my customers so much.
Yeah.
And it's almost ear shattering, the quiet.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I will miss that part, but I will still be around. So
Good.
Gone, but not totally forgotten.
Well, I would think in your head, you've got some good resources that people would need to access sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll always be available to anybody who needs anything from me.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, all. It's 10 o'clock. It looks like we still have a couple people signing on, so we'll just give everyone another minute and then we'll get started.
Just so everybody that's here will know, they had a meeting between the planning commission and the city commission. And I brought up in Texas, they reduced the lot size to create more housing down to 40-foot wide lots about 3 years ago. I've not read what the results were, but I have to wonder if we maybe shouldn't look at that. So I just wanted you to know I did suggest that to the commission. Whether they'll look at it or not, who knows? But that was one answer that a couple towns in Texas tried.
Interesting. All righty, well, it's about 10:02 right now, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We still may have a couple people signing in here and there, and we'll try and catch them as we go through the roster. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate the good turnout as always. Definitely seems like our Zoom meetings, much better turnout than we had in some of our in-person meetings, so this isn't a terrible thing. But at some point we'll have that conversation whether we're going to go back to live meetings, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So for the foreseeable future, we will still stay in this mode. It seems to be working for everybody. I got two more people signing in here. Let me get those people in. All right. Sorry, trying to multitask. All right, I don't believe we have any new members here. We introduced our newest members at our last meeting, so I'm going to go down and do the virtual roll call roster here. I know we have a couple of people that called and said they couldn't make it. Kate Allen's first on the list. She will be signing in about 10:25. Let's see here. Okay, I'll just call your name and then I'll mark you off here. Amy?
Here.
Okay. Teresa Barnes? Okay, Jonah?
Yep, I'm here.
Mike Davis?
I'm here.
Alan Evans? Leslie Ford?
Here?
Thank you. Eva Haig?
I'm here.
Okay. Eva's Eva or Eva?
It's Eva.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
All right, Kenny, I saw you there. Jennifer Holan? Scott Justice?
I'm here.
Okay, Jared, I saw you. Arlene Lemire?
Here.
Okay. Vivian, I saw you.
Good morning.
Lisa, good morning. Lisa McLean, I saw that you or actually I didn't see, but you aren't going to make it. Ozark, I saw you. Jan Peacher. Susan Prettyman.
Morning.
Good morning. David?
I'm here.
Okay. Counselor Rocca, I did see you. I'm here. Monica?
Here.
Okay. Terry?
Here.
Okay, good morning. Jerome, I saw you sign in. Raven, are you here by any chance? All right, Jessamine,
Here.
good morning.
Good morning.
All righty, thank you all. I appreciate that. So as I mentioned at our last meeting, these meetings are all being recorded. And we have now tried or are trying to do a service that takes the video from our meeting and they transcribe the meeting into our minutes. So throughout the years, we've had individuals help us out and do the minutes, and that's always worked pretty well, but we thought we'd try this. As of yesterday, we still have not received the minutes from our last meeting. So I know the transcription service is very busy. But unfortunately, I don't have the minutes from our last meeting to give to you because they have not been transcribed yet. We did follow up a couple days ago and they were behind and they were going to try and get them by today's meeting, but that has not happened. So if this continues, we may be going back to our old method, but we'll give it one more meeting to evaluate and see how that goes. So in lieu, we will, at our next meeting in March, we'll approve 2 sets of minutes. So apologize for that. So with that being said, Mayor, you are on for your welcome and some updates.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining the meeting today. And for folks that are relatively new and or any members of the public who may have signed on, just as a refresher, this is a group that was formed to basically provide a communications and collaboration and coordination forum for all the different entities, and there are so many in our county, that either nonprofit organizations, governmental organizations, or individuals who have some role to play with issues surrounding homelessness. And as you know, there's a complex web of issues, whether it has to do with mental health issues or skills training or abuse or addiction or employment issues, and a variety of other, of course, housing affordability. So there are a lot of people working on this, and it has proven to be very useful for all of us to talk every couple of months and share progress, share new ideas. Some things that have come out of that have been the homeless liaison positions that were created after being presented to this group. And that's so far been very successful as well. So that's kind of why we're here, to share information and for people to feel they can talk about anything they want to and share any problems and concerns that they have, as well as give the public an insight into what's happening with regard to homelessness issues. So one update I did want to provide was on the City Council and Astoria Development Commission's meeting on Tuesday of this week, 2 days ago, regarding the Heritage Square redevelopment project. So Heritage Square, as you know, has sat, the Safeway hole in the ground has been there for about 15 years. And the city, 5 years ago, the City Council at the time established a goal of redeveloping Heritage Square with a housing component, with a workforce housing component specifically. And every year that has sort of been pushed back because we had other pressing priorities like the completion of the Riverfront Vision Plan, code amendments. And of course, we've had the pandemic has slowed things down this as well for the last 2 years. So last year, at the end of last year, we met as a council and put that back on the front burner to develop Heritage Square with a workforce housing component. And after a request for expressions of interest, there were 2 proposals received from 2 different developers to do that. And there was a committee that I appointed, and I'm very thankful that we had David Reed, Monica Steele, who are in our group, and Jessamine West also in our group, as well as Walt Postaway from Craft 3 joined Brett Estes and Meg Leatherman as the 6 members of the review committee. And they had a very spirited debate about the 2 proposals. And I was very thankful for the time and attention they put into that and making a recommendation. And it was not a unanimous recommendation either. And those recommendations were brought to the City Council in its role as the Astoria Development Commission on Tuesday. And we had about a 3-hour meeting going through those proposals. And in the end, the Astoria Development Commission voted by a 4-to-1 vote to recommend that the City Council enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with Edlin and Company. And their proposal in a nutshell is to build a either 3 or 4, and most of the council favors 4-story building, which would be 77 housing units, about 2/3 studio 1-bedroom, and the rest 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom on the east side of the Heritage Square block with about 55 parking spaces. Those units, in order to be able to do this project, require significant federal and state grant funding. And the grant fund criteria are that none of the units can be for tenants whose income exceeds 80% of area median income. And the average has to be 60% of area median income. And the way the developer proposed to be able to accomplish this was to also include on the southwest corner of the property, which is the parking lot between the American Legion and the Elks, a 3-story building, which will be the home for Clatsop Behavioral Health's programs. And that would include 33 micro units, which are living units, tiny little apartment living units for permanent supportive housing or permanent supportive housing for people that meet their program's criteria, as well as their open door program with wraparound services for up to 70 clients. And I'm going to ask in a few minutes, I'll ask Amy Baker to talk in more detail about what her organization envisions for that, if that does in fact meet, through the final approvals and actually happen. The inclusion of those 33 units which would be at the 30% of AMI level, then enables the major part of the development to be more between the 60 to 80% of AMI, which is a little bit higher income level. The council's goal was for this to be largely workforce housing. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about what is workforce housing. Clearly, there's a significant portion of our workforce who are having difficulty finding housing, who aren't going to be assisted by this project. These are people that the hospital is recruiting that are trained professionals. These are skilled blue collar welders that Bob Dorn is hiring out at Tongue Point, who are making up to $70,000 a year. School administrators, a firefighter who's been on the job for more than a few years is making more money than so there's a significant component of the workforce that aren't going to be assisted by this project. What the council discussed was whether we want to have a project that tries to help a little bit at all levels of the workforce, or make a substantial dent at the lower end of the socioeconomic workforce ladder. And that is what the council has chosen to do. This is one of the few pieces of property owned by the city that the city actually has control over. And we felt it was more appropriate for the city to use its resources to develop a project that would address some of the lower workforce income needs, as well as fixed folks that are on a fixed income that may not be in the workforce anymore, and allow the private sector to continue to work on providing housing for people a little bit higher up on the income ladder. I wish it could address everything, but I don't think that's feasible, particularly on this lot, which we have found people are not willing, no one's coming to the city over the last 5 years with proposals to develop that lot because there's too many challenges involved in it. So at this point, that's just in a nutshell, and others may wish to weigh in with their different perspectives on this, but in a nutshell, and one thing I will point out, so there have been some comments about the type of atmosphere this development could create in the downtown area, whether it's appropriate for downtown. I would point out, if you go over to Mill Pond, that 4-story apartment building right across from the former bakery, that is the exact same type of project. That is a development that was developed under the same criteria of 60% of AMI, 80% max, using state and federal funding. And that's turned out to be a very nice building. I'm not aware of any problems we have over there. I'm not aware of any police calls over there. So that's been a big help to the community. So at this point, I would ask Amy Baker to just sort of talk about what her organization envisions for the separate building that would be on the southwest corner of that property.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. So my name is Amy Baker, and I'm the Executive Director for Clatsop Behavioral Healthcare. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this project with Elin. CBH has been looking for potential housing spots for the last 2 years. And this won't come as a surprise to anybody, but there's not a lot of options available. And there's not a lot of options available. And the other piece was that it was really important for us to be a part of a larger housing development entity, because they know how to apply for the funding. They know how to draw down the lift tax income credits in a way that we just don't. I'm a mental health agency, not a housing agency. And so this project has been it's a really good opportunity for us to do what we do best, which is serve folks who have mental health challenges in a way that's going to be far more sustainable and far more effective than it has been previously. I've said this in just about every meeting I've ever been in. You can't treat somebody if they don't have a place to live. It just doesn't work. Day-to-day life becomes about survival and not about, future-oriented thinking that involves treatment. So our open door program serves about 70 to 80 clients at any given time. It's our most intensive service for adults. It includes things like assistance with employment. It includes social living strategies, dealing with conflict, art therapy, assistance with helping folks take their medications, connection to primary care. There's a lot of support that goes into that program, and the CBH building, we modeled that after there's several examples of this type of model in the Portland area. The one that I'm most familiar with is the Garlington Center that Cascadia developed, where they have a clinic downstairs and housing upstairs. And we think that this will be extremely beneficial to ensuring that that clients are stable in their housing, and that it will increase our connectedness to them. It gives us greater potential to develop like programming and expectations, and if you're living part of this community, here's how you pitch in, here's how you help out, here's how you're responsible to your fellow residents. I know that there's definitely some concern about having CBH clients living downtown. And so I want to address that. First of all, they're already downtown. We've been in the building on 12th and Exchange for like the past year and a half, and pretty much nobody knew we were there. I would also say that most people have no idea who our clients are. I had my data analyst go back and look since we started our electronic health record. We have like over 10 years of unique client information, and we've served 10,000 unique Clatsop County members in some capacity or another. I should say not all of those are Clatsop County. Some may be from out of area, but largely those are Clatsop County residents. So it's the whoever folks have in their head about who our clients are, it probably makes up the 1% and not the greater population. And so what I believe will come of this project is we'll help get some of our most vulnerable Clatsop County residents into housing. We'll get them stably housed. We'll provide the wraparound services and supports that they need to be successful. We will contribute to the workforce. When our clients are stable, they work. They want to work. Most people want to work. It gives them a sense of purpose, meaning, value, and dignity. And that's the most important thing, I think, in offering solutions, is how do you help people get their dignity? And so there's other organizations who've done similar things. It's gone swimmingly, and I expect the same to happen with the Heritage Square project.
Thanks, Amy. That was a very good summary of the intent and your program's purpose. So just quickly, as far as next steps on the February 7th City Council meeting, the council will decide whether or not to sign the exclusive negotiating agreement that'll be presented to it. Also, the council will be considering the code and comprehensive plan amendments that are required to be able to put housing at that location. The developer has to apply for the federal and state grants. Those grants are going to be due in April. If they don't get the grants, the project's not going anywhere, not this year. So right there, that's a big hurdle. So, but if they get the grants, which are competitive grants, then the project would keep moving ahead this year. And I believe they had a projected timeline showing construction beginning in August of the following year of 2023. There's at each step of the way, these will be public city council meetings where the community has an opportunity to provide input and public comment. So by no means is it a done deal, but we have a path forward that is the desired path forward, and we're going to be moving that as quickly as we can within the constraints of the public process that exists. So at this point, I would just offer, if anyone who is on the advisory committee or other members of the Astoria Development Commission that are on, if they want to offer any different perspective, by all means, please.
Well,
Go ahead, Monica.
I was just gonna say, as a member of the committee, I was on there as myself, not a representative of Clatsop County, but being involved in a variety of different groups and recognizing the needs that our county has throughout, not just Astoria, but countywide, and some of the challenges that we are faced with, and also recognizing to the point that all the individuals that, because I know that several concerns were surrounding the CBH component, and for me, I feel that is only going to enhance the livability of the downtown community in regards to having access to these services and having a presence in supporting some of the actions that do take place downtown in the core area of the city. So I'm happy to answer any questions that people have. From the county's perspective, I do know that the Board of County Commissioners did write a letter of support to the city in regards to a project that incorporated a permanent supportive housing concept. And so.
Thanks,
And-
Monica.
Sorry about that. I was also on the selection committee, and there will be pushback from myself and from other downtown businesses on the breakdown, the nature of the larger building, the one that's low income housing. There might be some pushback on having the CBH facility there. I personally am prepared to defend that. I think that's a great spot. I think it's an appropriate spot, and I certainly think it's a great system there. So that part of the project to me was a bright spot. So the CBH component, that supportive housing, obviously needed in the community, and that's a decent and reasonable spot for it. The pushback you're going to get on this, if I have anything to say about it anyway, will be not about the clientele that would be in the low income housing portion of this. It will be about the dire need that our businesses have for true workforce housing. We're building an economy here that is getting healthier or has the potential to get healthier, and in this conversation, since I've been in this since beginning, and in other similar conversations, we talk a lot about, we lament the fact that as a society, we spend a lot of money dealing with the results of homelessness, but we don't spend any time or effort, or spend less time and effort on trying to prevent it. in my way of thinking, a healthy economy, living wage jobs, all of that is a huge component in prevention. If we keep opportunities for people, and that's what we're trying to, we'll be talking about trying to defend, is making sure that we have housing for folks that are going and able to work up in the workforce. We're not talking about rich people here. We're talking about servers who are actually getting tips and exceeding that. We're talking about cannery workers. We're talking about people. So anyway, that it'll be a conversation, but at least from my point, I know this group, I know the need, I know what we're talking about here. This is not about clientele. This will be strictly about mix.
I'll
Yeah.
kind of step in here on the just the foot of my other colleagues that I served on the committee with, and I want to reiterate what Ms. Steele said about not representing the county. I was also on the committee not representing ADHDA. ADHDA is a board of directors that has a range of opinions on this issue. But I just want to reiterate points that I've already made on record, and that is, as Mayor Jones mentioned, we can debate about the definition of workforce housing, but Eadlin's proposal as it stands serves a 30 to 80% AMI income range. So the 30% is the percentage that Amy was talking about, which I fully support the CBH component of this. 80% is getting upwards in for people that make over $19 an hour. And that is assuming that they work full time. So they're making over $40,000 a year. I know that that is not going to capture all of our workers in Astoria. I don't think this project is meant to, but it is going to address what, according to the Clatsop County Housing Study in 2019, specific to the city of Astoria, where the greatest need is. So 595 units in the income bracket that the current developer's proposal seeks to achieve. So I wish that it would solve all of our housing issues, but again, the need is much greater, and I definitely don't blame businesses for wanting housing for their workers that make over $19, for instance, an hour and are working full time. I think that's an important component because a lot of our retail and service industry workers don't work full time. So they might be making $25 an hour, but working part time, and they would still be eligible for this housing. So that is, I think, holistically why I chose to support Eadlin's proposal.
Sorry,
go
may
ahead.
I
Sorry,
chime
go
in
ahead.
with one more thing? And this isn't ever intended to be a debate. The one thing I do want to say is that Eadlin was chosen in large part because they brought CBH in, because they worked with local resources. They weren't trying to bring in additional outside resources to duplicate some of the work that's already being done here. So as an entity, I think we were all universally in favor of Eadlin as the developer there. And in large part, that was that sense of cooperation with local entities, most specifically CBH. So again, much support, some details on which we're going to differ. Let's work through those, and let's do it just like we do this, respectfully. And I appreciate it, everybody.
And I would just add to what David said in regards to Eadlin bringing in CBH. And so by bringing in CBH and having that low income component of 30% or less, that allows for that larger mixture to go from 30 to 80%, where the other developer wasn't looking at bringing on the permanent supportive housing component. And so then you were more refined to just a 60% of the market rate. And so this allowed that greater flexibility.
Sorry, I'm going to say one last thing too from our committee that I felt like was an important piece. And we had a great discussion on the committee, all really good points, but funding for this project is a really critical component. And so, as Monica said, Eland having that 30% allows them to have residents that go up to 80% AMI. If either proposal goes over 80%, they are not eligible for that state and federal funding that is critical to this project getting built or happening. So I think that's an important piece to mention.
Yeah, and even with going to up to 80% of AMI with some of their tenants rent and the rent structure as well, the city is still going to be on the hook for some level of commitment from both of the developers. The city was going to have to either give them the property for free, give it to them at a below market rate, and possibly kick in urban renewal dollars to the project to make it happen. So it's a very expensive place to build. And of course, building anything right now, anywhere, is way more expensive than it was 2 years ago because of skilled labor shortages, because of material shortages. Everything's more expensive. So I'm actually very excited that this has a chance to move forward and at least address one part of our housing concerns. And I'm very much interested in working with the chamber and others in figuring out how do we, where else in Astoria can we address some of those other housing needs for people that aren't going to be eligible for this project. Rick, go ahead.
I'd just like to say, even though I'm not in your area, I am absolutely thrilled with this because it is I believe, I've been wrong before, but this is a great step forward. People so often talk about how we should fix this, but as you well know, nothing's really happened. And this looks like a really good project to try to break that cycle and get people off the street that are employable, because that's the problem. Is it's like a cat chasing his tail. You can't get them on medicine because you never know where it'll be. You know what I mean? And I am absolutely thrilled for you guys to have this project. If it works, maybe we could do one over here. I don't know. We just have to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Are there any questions or comments from the rest of the host on this topic? And Jeff, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Good conversation, and I know we'll hear back from Amy a little bit more on a couple other topics, so stay tuned. Monica, you are up on a couple updates, and I think you're also covering too on the pallet shelter.
Yeah, so thank you, Chief. To touch on the Classic Opportunity Village pallet housing project that Ron has been working on, that is still kind of in a holding pattern, and Teresa can speak to this if she wants. It's my understanding that they're continuing to try and work with the Astoria warming shelter to see about a possibility of a fit there. And so until they're able to work through some of those issues or whatever, it's just kind of at a holding place. Did you want to add anything, Teresa?
No, I think that's fair to say. Yeah, we've had a lot of board transitions going on, and we have to approve a new mission before we can add another thing onto it. But we're definitely in support of the idea.
Perfect, thanks. So to add on to other things that the county is working on, so in the last board meeting and then in the board meeting on Wednesday, the 26th, I had previously mentioned, the county received ARPA monies. And the ARPA monies are to be used for a variety of state and federal guidelines, as well as in line with the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners strategic plan. And so they have decided to allocate some of those funds for mental health crisis, navigation centers, emergency shelter support systems, and then other nonprofits. So in this current fiscal year, they have allocated $270,000. And so of that, 70,000 is going in support of navigation centers, and 35,000 of that has been allocated to the newly opening Helping Hands Navigation Center down in Seaside. And then the other 35,000 is going towards lifeboat services. And I know that there have been a lot of concerns, and there's been a lot of work going on between those at Lifeboat Services as well as with CBH and the Astoria PD and CCA. There's been a real strong collective effort to try and help address some of those concerns. And so some of the funding that flexibility of these dollars that has been provided to Lifeboat Services is so that they can hire, if they so choose, to enhance monitoring and management to kind of address some of those impacts on surrounding businesses. And then in addition to some installation and capital improvements inside of the building. And so this is the intention of these monies. Is it's always difficult, especially when you're applying for grants, to have flexibility with your money. And so we are trying with all of these agencies to provide flexibility with the dollars that we're providing them to be able to provide the services they are to the community. Some of the other money that we handed out through contracts is for the emergency shelter support system. And so 20,000 was granted to the Astoria warming shelter, 20,000 to the harbor, and then 60,000 to Helping Hands. And that's for both their Astoria and Seaside locations. And then other nonprofit support, $100,000 was allocated to Clatsop Community Action. And this is the fiscal year 21-22 allocation. And so we will be allocating funds again in 22-23 and looking at it through this same lens, as well as any new variances that come up in the next year. Another project that the county is continuing to work on is we too, like the city, have our land inventories. And so we're continuing to kind of look at that, work with AOC on how best to address those land inventories. And one of the things that we are discussing internally is to address a county's immediate needs surrounding those individuals who are released from prison and come back to our community because this is where they are from, and trying to find housing for them. In some instances, these individuals are sex offenders, and so their choices for housing are really limited. And oftentimes what ends up happening is they are then living on the streets because they're unable to find housing. So the county is exploring micro housing options that we might be able to do for this specific population to kind of help address our parolee situation. And what that looks like for us is we're still working through all of that. But at this point in time, I don't have anything further unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Monica. Any other questions of Monica on either of the two updates? Okay, thank you again. For our next topic, Jerome Steigmans is going to talk a little bit about the countywide liaison work group that we've been having. And I've actually been part of that, and I'm really excited to some of the conversations we've had. And I see a lot of really good things coming out of this work group here. So I don't want to steal your thunder, Jerome. So you are up.
Thank you. Oh, no thunder stolen at all. It's an exciting time. Thank you for the introduction. And I joined Clatsop Community Action back in November, and this quickly became a big focus of mine, kind of working on this project. And the homeless liaison team has a lot of attention and support on it. It's the first step that I really got to participate in was kind of meeting with Chief Spalding and other stakeholders, kind of trying to take stock of community expectations and hopes and fears regarding the whole situation. So we kind of looked at what this team was positioned to do well, kind of looked at all these aligning and competing factors to kind of come up with a really clear identity and mission. There had been kind of overlapping expectations. Some people in the business community were hoping we would be available for quick, immediate response to kind of crises as they were emerging. But the first thing that we really accomplished was kind of coming up with a one sheet to distribute that really summarizes where we are and what we can do. And I put together a very dry slideshow that I would like to be able to share if Chief Spalding could grant me permission to do that. And I mentioned there was a prepared one sheet doesn't really fit into one slide. So I'll guide you through this if I can. Yeah, here we go. Now I'm going to try to share my PowerPoint window and then.
Okay, we
Go
can
ahead.
see it.
Okay, excellent. Do you still see the presentation now that I've gone full screen in here?
The homepage.
The homepage is Clatsop Community Action. Is in my.
Yep, homeless liaison team.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the first thing I'll just kind of guide you through is really the content of that one sheet, which kind of summarizes the team through the collaborative effort we made in defining it. So I apologize for the text heavy presentation, but this is what I got today. Yeah, and really this program is set up as a bridge between the needs of our unhoused members of the community and systems of health and social services. And we're set up to collaborate with partners across the community, healthcare providers, police departments, mental health, social service agencies, to support individuals and families, resolve disputes, disturbances, create connections between the homeless community, the city government, community services, and different agencies. This is our main contact information. We are not on call 24 hours a day. We're 9 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And generally we get back pretty close to immediately, but we are, across the county. And yeah, we'll try to get back by the end of the same day or next business day if somebody's reaching out to us after hours. There's voicemail and email address there. Also wanted to point out to other people, if there are situations that need immediate response that are non-emergent situations, Clatsop Behavioral Health Crisis Line or non-emergency lines for the local police departments. Make sure people have those. And really, coming back to, we connect families and individuals experiencing homelessness to available programs and social services in our countywide support network. That's what we're trying to do. And we're here to not only connect people across that support network, we're here to build that support network and build the relationships and strengthen that network as we move forward. And the main things that we provide and the main things that we do out on the street are street outreach, connecting people directly to emergency shelters and warming centers, homeless prevention programs. I think David Reed had mentioned how big a need for prevention there is. It doesn't get talked about a lot. And 80% of what we do at Clatsop Community Action is homelessness prevention. And we have our own rapid rehousing programs that connect people to. And so that was really the first kind of step, was creating that one sheet identity defining piece to make it clear what we're aimed at and how community can get in touch with us and what we're trying to accomplish. The next piece was looking at the data that we're collecting in the field and what we're doing with that and how we're using it. We started a relationship with Data for Change, who's a part of the Center for Outcomes and Research Education. And they are really focused on providing consultation support for healthcare data practices. They're really interested in looking at social determinants of health for a healthier, more equitable future. And they do a lot of work with folks in the social services sector to come up with good data practices and strategies aimed at equity. So we looked at the data that we're collecting and tried to think about what we what we're trying to do with that and how we can share that between our agencies to provide not only a clear picture of what's happening in our community, but what the needs are and what we're succeeding at and what we can aim at to do better, if that makes sense. Trying to create these feedback loops of collection to not only, provide reports on what's happened, but to use that data to drive our strategy moving forward. So, and then just a little sample of some of the kind of things that we've been collecting, right? This is from a live, like last month running of what we're experiencing in the field. When our homeless liaisons are out there, 59% of the people we're encountering are camping, 17% have been staying in emergency shelters, 18 in vehicles. Just a little summary of the kind of services we've been providing over the last month. Primarily, they're just checking on people and meeting them and building relationships. There's a lot of building relationships that is required before we're able to take further steps. And we're providing supplies, case management, move-alongs is this category of trying to alleviate some of the calls the police department gets for people sleeping on doorsteps, and just we try to wake people up, a cup of coffee and move along. I wanted to go back actually and just highlight this intake figure. This is somebody that was brought into the office to do an intake into our housing programs. And now, one doesn't look like an impressive number perhaps, but it is it's a big win. There's not any housing available, and getting somebody that has no resources and support into that pipeline of support to move them toward housing, it's big. And every one of those we get is really something to be proud of. Now, this is a little block just showing where referrals have been coming to us in the past 30 days. When I started here in November, I think we had maybe 2 referrals from the Seaside Police Department for that month, and we've been trying to build those relationships and connect with people more and more. And I'm seeing a lot of growth in the number of referrals we're getting from different places, right? So we had 15 referrals from the Seaside Police Department, 3 from CBH, 3 from CMH, Astoria Police Department sent a couple people our way. And this is, it's growing a lot, and I hope to see that grow even more. Referral by destination, where we're sending people. And so we're sending people to Clatsop Behavioral Health, to Columbia Memorial Hospital, giving out shower passes, clothing vouchers, information, etc. There's one more thing that the kind of data aggregation feeds into, which is this idea of the frequent flyers program, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with that term. If not, there are certain individuals that are a larger, require a larger commitment of resources than others. People that come up again and again to the police department, to the emergency room, people that have been very hard to provide services to, that bounce back and forth from the emergency room to the police and go back and forth, and nobody knows how to deal with a lot of these folks that just seem to be really struggling, problematic situations. We're working on ways to share a little more information about that. So we're still exploring the ways to do that, but we're looking at having a little bit of data shared between us so that we can see when the police get a call about an individual, they can check to see that they've been dealt with by our team, how many times, regarding what things in the last however many days, whether they've been in the emergency department, rather than just kind of dropping off people cold and hoping somebody else can deal with it. We're looking at having a way to really share a little bit of that history so that when people come up on the radar, we can see these people have been talking about these things so far. These are resources that may still be available. These are things that we're trying. Yeah. That kind of,
Can you elaborate on what other includes in regards to you're sending people to CBH, CMH, and so forth? What exactly is other?
yeah, other can be a lot of things. I know that in the past week, I think we've been promoting the Project Homeless Connect a lot. That's happening on Tuesday out at the Seaside Convention Center. So I think that a large number of those are referrals to that project, trying to get people excited to show up out there. But really, I don't have a whole list of other things in there. Usually it's not been so high, but I think it's largely as we've got Project Homeless Connect that has been entered as referrals there. Does that answer your question? Yeah, so that's kind of where we've been and what we've been working on. Does anybody else have any other questions you'd like to throw at me?
Hi, this is Viviana. I just want to mention that the advisory board committee, which is a few of us here on this call, including Jerome, we meet often to come up with new ways on trying to help our unsheltered population and also our businesses and community partners and all of that. So if you have any feedback to us, please don't hesitate to reach out and to see how we can improve this program. So thank you.
Thank you. And, I have a few things I want to follow up on Jerome's conversation, but Vivian, I know you have to leave at 11. So would you like to go ahead and talk a little bit about Project Connect and the flyer that I sent out earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. So since 2010, CCA has been hosting Project Homeless Connect, which is very much like a job fair, but we have a lot of different social service agency between 45 and 50 with about 100 volunteers. And because of COVID last year, we were not able to have it. And this year we'll have it. It's going to be a very limited Project Homeless Connect, more of a wellness Project Homeless Connect. We're not going to be having any volunteers, and we're only going to have less than 10 agencies participating at the event. We just want to be safe and also providing services to our unsheltered population. And it's going to be happening at the Seaside Convention Center. Transit is going to be free to anybody in Clatsop County, so people can take the bus to the convention center. We are going to be providing a meal to go. We'll be providing vaccinations, not only vaccines for COVID, but also flu vaccine and others as well. And CBH will be there, the harbor, and yeah, it's at the Seaside Convention Center on Tuesday from 10 to 2 p.m. So if you do have people who are in shelter, please send them our way. And that is a combination with point in time count. Clatsop Community Action receives federal and state fundings, and we are required to count the homeless population in our community. And we are going to be counting our unsheltered population on that day as well. So, and Susan, if you want to add anything to it, anything that I'm forgetting, Susan has been taking the lead this year at Project Homeless Connect. It has been my baby for the last 11 years, so it's hard for me to give it up. But Susan, if you want to, I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
Well, I think you covered it really well. And I think for us, the most important thing is that we really wanted to work with agencies that work directly with the unsheltered population. And in previous years, we've had upwards of 60 different agencies there. So we worked really hard to choose agencies like the Harbor, Helping Hands, Lifeboat, CBH, our health departments. And we will also have free haircuts that are available that day. We have a swag table, so we're going to give away lots of things that people need, health and wellness things like first aid kits, nail clipper kits, things that are really important to people and they genuinely need when they're unsheltered. So that's all I have to add to it. We're really, really excited. It'll be on the 25th between 10 and 2 at the Seaside Convention Center. And if anybody has any clients that meet that criteria, please send them our way.
Thank you, Susan. Susan or Aviva, anything else for the good of the order? I know you guys got to go in about 10 minutes or so.
No, thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just coming back to Jerome's conversation, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm part of that group. There's I don't know, 5 or 6 of us for representing different agencies. Most of them are here on this call. I think we're really had some really good conversations. It's clear we all come from different places, but at the same time, it's been a very cooperative group. Everybody, seems to come together and understand, everybody's interests and, for the good of the order. So it's been very productive and helping identify, what the liaisons are going to do. As Jerome touched on, for lack of better title, and we'll come up with something better, but calling it the frequent flyer program, is about identifying individuals who are using most of our resources throughout the county. And again, for lack of being repetitive, because this is an important topic and I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to weigh in if they have any thoughts or concerns. But as many of you know, we have many individuals who literally have over 300 calls for service, not just in Astoria, but throughout the county. We had 2 individuals come and disrupt a council meeting the other night. The one female half had over 200 calls. The male half only had 20 calls. But again, he's only been here since the middle of December. He came from Portland. Not sure how he got here, but and these aren't just casual calls. These are calls where they've been trespassed from a location. They've been arrested for a disturbance or a trespassing type violation. And so our thoughts are that through our system, we are able to identify individuals going back, maybe looking at the previous month and coming up with our top 10 people who are using most of our resources and are getting the calls for service. And this is not with a design to enforce the law on them, it's to get them into services. Sometimes that may mean enforcement is the appropriate path, because that's what sometimes it takes to get people the mental health services they need. And I believe that Amy would support that. So with that being said, identifying these individuals and then trying to take a closer deep dive in terms of what do these individuals need? What services do they need? Is it mental health services? Is it alcohol addiction? There's a whole myriad of things that some of these individuals need. And we feel that we can probably have the greatest impact on the calls that we're seeing in our community and reduce the amount of drain on our system by, focusing on these individuals. The group that will be looking at these people will be only one person from the police department by design. There'll be several other individuals as part of this group that will represent all the different agencies, all the stakeholders that are impacted by the drain on our services and our system. So I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to comment if they want to, and if people feel that this is being unfair or we're unfairly targeting individuals. That's not the case. This is really all with getting services to people that really need them and to reduce the calls for service. We all know at the end of the day, in our county, we have very few enforcement related hooks to hold people accountable. We want to find ways to hold people accountable in other ways using our social service system. So I just wanted to reiterate what Jerome said. Jerome did a good job explaining it, but I just want to emphasize how important I think this is and how valuable I think it will be for our community. So with that being said, I'll open it up for any comments, thoughts.
Well, let me just jump in and say I am really excited about this. I think it's absolutely critical to target the frequent flyers. And this is not only that we're using the resources of all of you who have organizations or nonprofits that are having to spend so much of your limited time on a few people repeatedly without any seeming improvement. That's enough of a reason to do it. But frankly, the small number of frequent flyers are the cause of most of the community, the antagonism that has appeared on social media, the negativity, and frankly, the it creates a unwillingness among community who otherwise would be more sympathetic to assist with these issues. It makes people just want to throw their hands up and say, all the homeless are the problem. You need to, quote unquote, get rid of the homeless. And it's because of this small handful of individuals. And so it just consumes a lot of energy in a negative fashion. And if there's a way to identify those specific individuals, and as you said, Chief, their specific needs, that may be a law enforcement need, but ideally it is a way to say, you know what, this person that's generated 200 calls in the last 3 months, is there anything we can offer her that would actually get her to stop generating these calls, that would get her something that she will respond to, and no longer be consuming all of your resources? Because all those hours that you spend, that Kenny Hansen spends, responding to these individuals, this time not being spent on other community policing that would make our community a safer and better place to live. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. And as always, appreciate the support. Any other thoughts, comments from members of the group that's working on this that may be something that Jerome or I missed?
Just wanted to say one more thing about the frequent flyers. I think you've made the point really clearly, but I again want to reiterate, it's not about not having compassion and trying to provide assistance to people in need, but it's really identifying people that are regular avenues of assistance have failed, and assessing what their needs are, looking at what's been tried, how many times it's been tried, and being able to plan for their individual cases accordingly. And what we're really trying to do is to make that identification easier and make sure that we're communicating kind of interagency to share what we've tried, what we think might help, and look for alternate resources and figure out ways to find hooks of accountability to provide those services to help out, move them into a more stable position rather than just leaning on all those resources.
Thanks, Jerome. And I will add that when we look at these individuals who make this so-called list, this is not just Astoria. All of the law enforcement agencies in Clatsop County share the same records management system and computer-aided dispatch system. So this list will incorporate all those individuals from South County to North County and everything in between. And we all of us law enforcement leaders, we all seem to know the same names. Many of these names come up in our meetings. We have, our mental health meetings we have every couple of weeks. And so we all know the same individuals. They're not just, indigenous to Astoria. So again, even though this group started off and was primarily Astoria focused, this really is a countywide problem, and we're all working together to find solutions. I see a couple of hands up, David.
Are there models for this, what called the frequent flyer program, but are there models for this elsewhere that we are able to look at? And are we talking about, in some cases, sort of moving somebody to the front of the line in terms of services? Like, this is a person who acutely needs this, we're going to move them up because they're frequent flyer. I guess I'm just wondering if there are unintended consequences possible where somebody, I'm going to make a lot of noise, therefore I will get to the front of the line.
Yeah, and that's a good question. We started that conversation. This is one of the things that I think we do need to flush out so that somebody doesn't get priority for bad behavior. And I think that is absolutely a great question. As far as models go, I'm sure there are models out there. I do know that some of this comes from some of the earlier community-oriented policing and problem-oriented policing, not so much on an individual basis, but more of a location basis. So I know in my former life in different agencies, we've identified the top 10 locations where problem areas, and we would focus on those. So it's an offshoot of that. But I can't imagine that this hasn't been tried, or at least a version of this been tried somewhere else. But we probably could do some additional research, and so we're not totally reinventing the wheel. But this is probably our first introduction to this group to throw this out there and actually collect the good questions like you just asked. Leslie?
So I just wanted to add that, yes, there are lots of models and they're very successful. Early days, when we identified clusters of high need folks, we used to call it hotspotting. And this is a practice that's probably been utilized for the last 10 years or so. And it was a major emphasis to the coordinated care organization. So the things that we learned were not only what the individuals need, but when they cluster around a certain part of the system, you also learn some of your gaps in your system of services. So the outcomes for hotspotting are really strong. There's lots of data to support it. And it's a pretty simple way to make a difference. So I really want to support these efforts and applaud you for taking these steps. That I think you'll really see some big differences.
Thank you, Leslie. And if you have any interest in being, tuning into the group, we're more than happy to invite you, get all the expertise we can, and make sure we're going about this the right way.
Yeah, be happy to help.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, there are actually more pieces to this. Everything we're talking about somehow seems to all connect together, and which to me is the interesting part of this, in a good way, is that we're going to be talking a little bit more about some programs that Amy's going to touch on, and then I'll follow back up. And some of this is connected. Some additional programs we're looking at internally here in the police department as well. So to be continued, and as this grows legs. So with that being said, Amy, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chief Spalding. Yes, and I didn't want to chime in when everybody has chimed in so much, but obviously, like, a lot of this is around trying to address unmet need, and I don't see it as necessarily like bumping anyone to the front of the line, other than trying to figure out what specifically is going on for someone. And sometimes, like, the best possible solution is to figure out how to get them back with their family in other parts of the country, which we've done before, because that's where their support system was. So there's a lot of unique ways in which we, I think, can come together and bring the different parts of the system to help meet people's needs. My updates are, one was related to the Seaside Transitional Housing. That construction project has taken a little bit longer than I would have liked. We got a little bit hung up with permitting for a couple of months, and then my contractor had another project he had to work on. So we are hopefully slated to be finished with the shelter in February at some point, and then we'll be need to get hired up for that, but hopefully we will be opening that up this spring. The other update that I had is that we are, thanks to Clatsop County, we are working on our mobile crisis law enforcement response project, which means that we are hiring mobile crisis clinicians who will do co-response with law enforcement. Astoria is our first starting place, in part because in order to make this project work well, it really requires a strong partnership between law enforcement and the mobile crisis team, so that it feels like it's a very coordinated response, that there's a clear understanding of roles and how that response is going to go. And Astoria, I don't want to speak for Chief Spalding, because I think there's some more development that needs to happen there, but we started to introduce our recently hired clinician to the Astoria Police Department. We are intending on hiring at least 2 more mobile crisis clinicians. We want to cover the span of the county, but we really want to do the project right. And there are other counties that have done this very well, Washington County being one of them. I've gotten all of their written policies and procedures and such around how they did that really well. And so we'll be looking at that. But there's implementing this in the right way is going to be really important to make sure that both law enforcement and the clinical staff who are doing the project feel like it's a really good partnership and that it's a really good use of everybody's time. Chief Spalding, did I capture that well?
No, yeah, absolutely did. And I would just add that we are excited about the opportunity. Having somebody embedded in the police department, having that contact. Obviously, we're not going to be able to hit every call that involves a mental health crisis, but just having that expertise and somebody that has experience in another police department, this kind of goes hand in hand to some of the previous conversations we've just had. Because we're trying to, work towards our more recent community service officer position, kind of morph that a little bit into even a, maybe more of a part-time or full-time homeless liaison type officer. That's something that's early stages of development, may or may not happen, but that person would be working very closely with this person. And again, working with the frequent flyer program and many of the other programs. And so we're excited about it. It's a great opportunity for us, and we appreciate our continued partnership with CDH.
And we're excited about it as well, because it's what I've learned about mental health crises all these years is that mental health crisis is almost always an opportunity to engage somebody in a different way. A lot of folks don't seek help on their own until they're in a point of crisis, and this gives us the protection of having law enforcement with us, and also the opportunity to intervene and to use our skill set in these situations, rather than having law enforcement be the kind of the primary point of contact. The other.
Can I interrupt really quick, Amy?
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to kind of add a little bit more to that in regards to the county's intention behind this. And part of that is that, there's been a lot of conversations around cahoots. And kind of to Leslie's point is there's lots of examples of things out there, and cahoots is an example, but it's not something that necessarily is one size fits all. And so this is our collaborative effort with the cities and the county to try and find what's going to work best for Clatsop County. And I think the important piece to this is that this person isn't just going to be like hanging out at the police station waiting for a call to come in. This person is going to essentially, be working with the police and have a partnership and a relationship that they'll be co-responding to certain calls on, and not just waiting for calls to come, but also to be proactive and kind of know some of those areas that are those hot spots, or looking out for those individuals that, our law enforcement throughout the county are very well with some of those places that people kind of hide or hang out or whatever the case may be. And just being able to go to those locations proactively rather than reactively to kind of check in with people and see, if they've been, needing services or if they've been engaged in services. And so not just kind of a wait and see what happens, but being really proactive.
Yeah, all good points. Thanks, Monica. Amy, anything else on that?
No, that concludes my updates.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Amy? Okay, seeing none. Mike Davis, you are up, helping hands.
Good morning, thank you. So some updates, our Astoria location, Uniontown, we've got a few beds available in emergency shelter, 5 for women, 1 for men. Our reentry program, our men's is completely full. We've got 39 people currently in reentry, and we've had a small COVID outbreak there, and we've got 4 people in quarantine at the moment. At our Seaside Women's House, unfortunately, COVID hit everybody there. So, and we're 100% full, but everybody has recovered and is doing well. They've been doing some volunteer work at the animal shelter, which they've been enjoying. And they've shifted their volunteer work to the Seaside Warming Center that we were able to open in partnership with CCA, Sunset Empire Parks and Rec, and Sunset Empire Transportation. The warming center is low barrier. Once the temperature drops to 36 degrees, it triggers the opening. It is staffed by the women at the Seaside Women's House, which we're excited. We do allow pets. We provide showers, shower vouchers, evening meal, sack lunch, and the next day for them to take with them. That's all provided by Sunset Empire Parks and Recreation. Bus pass for the next day by Sunset Empire Transportation. And it was funded through CCA. And so, you know, the folks that are coming in through there are learning about resources that are available in the community. And we're collecting some demographics and things like that for folks. So we were really excited about being able to get that open quickly and get that up and running. Just some stats for 2021 for all of Helping Hands. We were able to help 744 people with up to 4 nights in emergency shelter. We provided over 40,000 meals. 67% of the folks that go into emergency shelter are going on to our long-term reentry programs. And we provided 795 classes for folks last year. So we were really excited about that. We've got our 20th anniversary coming up on February 4th. And so we'll be having some announcements with that. Anything you want to add?
Also at the warming center, as soon as it opens, the doors open, one of the liaisons comes down and works directly with the clients that come to the warming center. We've been really excited about the expansion. Our next move for that facility there is going to be creating a navigation center, hopefully by June, with the rest of this building. So we'll still provide warming center opportunities in the winter, but we'll have a drop-in center and some other things that we're working towards right now. And it's pretty exciting news in the partnerships to make sure that we can have a navigation center in the Seaside area.
And the last thing I'll add is we're days away from opening the rest of our Bybee Lakes Hope Center, which will add nearly 200 beds in the Portland metro area. And with our other 2 capital projects we have going on, we'll be at 644 beds in the state of Oregon for people experiencing homelessness. Any questions?
Oh, I have one, Mike. Is there a number for the Seaside Warming Center? I know we had a family we were trying to place there, and I think that our center coordinator was just in contact with Cheryl, maybe. Is there like a number that we could call?
Yeah, we do have that number, but not right at us right now. So if you want to shoot Mike an email, we can get that phone number over to you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Well, Mike, those are some really impressive statistics, you know, of all the meals served and the nights housed. And those are people off the streets that we're not getting calls on. So we definitely appreciate all your work. And of course, Alan, with your work at Bybee Lakes, and, you know, the impact on Oregon is tremendous. So appreciate all the good work there.
Thanks, Chief Spalding.
Thank you. All righty. Ozark, you are up with Lifeboat Services update.
Hello there. So can everybody hear me? Okay. So we currently serve 30 to 50 meals a day, pass out clean socks and underwear every day, hygiene products, and average about 10 clothing closet vouchers per week. Helping Hands has been writing vouchers, CCA as well. We will take clothing closet vouchers, and if you want a blank copy, just email me and let me know from any agency locally. We have bathrooms available for our guests, laundry, 10 sleeping bags upon request. We have Wi-Fi, a couple of computers for resources. I run the TV all day with some movies and shows, coffee and tea, and light breakfast stuff, pastries and things. Let's see, we have a PO box available to our participants to receive mail. Co-located advocates every day, CBH caseworkers, and the Rah-Rahs from CCA homeless liaisons. Once a week, the harbor makes available an advocate via Zoom for a couple of hours a day. We have just recently hooked up with the DA's victim services to do the same thing, and to make sure that our participants can get their services when they need them. I just started construction on showers, so those should be done within a month-ish. And once that is done, we are going to do a warming center. I've already acquired the mattresses, and we are currently looking for any volunteers for that purpose. We will be hiring a couple people as well. Let's see, implemented rules and to reduce public visibility to help with some of the negative public opinions. I have implemented no shopping cart rules on our block, and it's pretty easy for me to do that because those are actually stolen property. And if anyone brings a cart onto the block, I will suspend them from services. And if they keep doing it, they don't get to have our services. Zero tolerance for drugs, alcohol, or violent behaviors. And we've passed out about 150 shower passes since we opened up. Let's see what else. I'll move on to the Beacon Clubhouse. Beacon Clubhouse, we have an average of 15 to 20 unduplicated members engaging in the clubhouse daily, with a total of 81 individual referrals. Let's see, we've finished the transfer of NAMI, or of Beacon from NAMI. It's now umbrellaed under Lifeboat Services. See, we've developed a transitional employment program, and we've placed our first clubhouse member into the transitional employment program. So that I have one of the members working with me, filling empty bellies, the navigation center. We've expanded our work units to increase member engagement, increased membership. We're up to 81 referrals. I think we were at 70 when we opened here. 12 members have been housed, 13 members have found employment, 3 members enrolled and remained in school. 1 member completed NAMI peer-to-peer training and has enrolled for second course. 15 plus members have received their food handlers cards because members upstairs helped me to create the meals for filling empty bellies. And then I'm going to sign off with a member success story. This member came to us with a diagnosis of severe anxiety, depression, and PTSD. She was houseless after fleeing a domestic abuse situation. She had nothing but the clothes on her back. We connected her to our local resource center and survivors of abuse, the harbor. She was able to file a restraining order on her perpetrator and get a new phone. We advocated for her to get her housing back, as well as her housing voucher. We supported her as she met with her counselor every week, and she engaged in the clubhouse activities and work units to stay busy and connected to people whom she trusted. She became our first transitional employment placement, and she now works part-time with Filling Empty Bellies and Navigation Center. She has her apartment back, and she is actively working on her mental and physical health.
Thanks, Oz. That's awesome. I had a question just in regards to what you mentioned earlier about the clothing closet, and I was wondering how you all take donations for clothes.
So currently, we are only accepting warm weather clothing because thankfully we have had a lot of donations. So yeah, only warm weather clothing. We are packed up on most. We have a lot of women's clothing. Obviously, as most of you know, most of our population, houseless population, is male. So we go through male clothing a lot faster. Yeah, so warm weather clothing, waterproof gear is always welcome.
Great, thanks.
Sorry, does anybody have any questions of us? David?
Thank you again for that update. That's tremendous work. The no shopping carts policy, the zero tolerance for drug and alcohol. Have you had any change in interaction with your downtown business neighbors? Are they feeling better about that? Has that been noticeable improvement in your relationships downtown?
As far as I am concerned and have yes, I could say that it definitely has improved from what I can tell.
Just
I'd like to speak up.
Oh,
if I can.
I see a couple people. Mariana, was that you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I actually just had a comment and follow up to David's question. I'm Mari. I'm on the board of Lifeboat as well as the board of ADHDA, and I'm manager at Carruthers Restaurant. And I have personally heard a lot of positive feedback over the last few weeks about 10th to 11th Street on Commercial being a lot cleaner, a lot easier for customers and visitors to be walking through, more comfortable. So kudos on that for encouraging those guidelines.
Thank you, Mari. Naomi, did I see you looking to speak?
Yeah. Hi,
Go ahead.
I would love to. I'm right across the street at Sea Gypsy. I'm right across from Lifeboat. And I did have some questions because I know you guys have done really well with the shopping carts on your side. But now they're over on our side. What kind of options do we have to maybe have the carts moved? Or like, I don't want to take anybody's belongings by any means. But we're getting a lot of garbage and carts and that are, between me and the Bank of the Pacific that is empty now. And so there's just a lot of trash that's coming, down to this end of 10th Street. So what are our options?
I mean, if you're asking me, I can't really answer that question, because where the carts are being put over there are public, public property. I don't, all I can do is encourage our members to leave their carts elsewhere. But I mean, then someone else is going to complain about where they're at. I just don't. I mean, I don't have any answers to that. I will continue to encourage them to leave their carts in spaces that are not visible. But beyond that, I'm certain. I mean, I apologize. You're having to deal with that.
Okay. I mean, I just didn't even know if there's also like is there, if there's a city ordinance to not have carts on the sidewalk? I mean, what do we do as other business owners that have them in the way, or customers are feeling, I don't know. I'm getting a lot of feedback from downtown that women will not shop downtown anymore because of our homeless problem. And this isn't just directed at you, Oz, by any means. This is all of the whole, downtown, right? But so it's just concerning. Like, okay, can we, what can we do to keep our sidewalks clean so that maybe shoppers feel a little bit safer?
So there is actually, I mean, the main thing that I see that can be done is that if people complain to like Safeway, where most of the carts are coming from, and have them pick them, because it is stolen property, have them pick up the carts, and request that they have someone round up their carts. And that would go a long way to help to cure that issue.
Okay.
And Naomi, I'll just add, and I see two hands raised, Teresa and Jonah. And maybe Jonah, you'll be able to chime in on this as well. I will say that this question does come up frequently, and because there are certain constitutional provisions that allow people to, first off, there's no prohibition against loitering, and having your worldly goods with you in some cases, as long as you're not completely blocking the sidewalk. There's no prohibition against having a grocery cart or again, some of your items that you carry. You do, with that being said, you cannot block people's, access and egress to businesses or free flow of the sidewalk. And the question also comes up, for individuals that are handicapped in wheelchairs, and that's always a concern too. So it's difficult. A lot of this is not necessarily, it's a police matter. Sometimes it's a zoning issue. So Jonah, were you going to speak to that at all, or did you unrelated?
No, I just wanted to point out our Parks Department picks up a lot of shopping carts that are left in our parks and public spaces that we're responsible for. And our maintenance supervisor has talked to Safeway to notify them that we have their property and we're not really sure what to do with it in all cases, especially if it's in a state where we wouldn't want to just leave it back in the parking lot for their customers to use right away. So we've got, I think, at least 6 or 7 carts here at our maintenance shop because the manager of Safeway had said that they have some kind of service that would go and collect the carts. But that's been quite a while. We haven't seen any movement on that. So I don't know that they have the capacity or the time or ability to be picking up a lot of carts throughout the city, or even if it's centralized. So just throwing that out there. I know it's a challenge, and obviously these are carts we collect that are not filled with people's belongings that have been abandoned for whatever reason throughout the city.
I will just add a comment from our city attorney here that talks about the sidewalks, and our city attorney opined that sidewalks are owned by the adjacent property owner subject to public right-of-way. Our ordinances place the responsibility on the owner to keep the sidewalk in a good state of repair to eliminate the hazard of injuries to pedestrians, and it cites the code sections. Other than the policy dealing with restaurant tables, the adjacent owner has no right to restrict the public from use of the sidewalk. The adjacent property owner is responsible for accumulation of rubbish and garbage on the sidewalk, which can cause the property to be deemed a nuisance. Other than that, there is no specific ordinance that prohibits a private party other than the owner from blocking the sidewalk with their personal possession. So that's from our attorney. And Mayor, I don't know if you have any new information on that, but I think that was the last communication we had from our city attorney.
No, I haven't seen anything further. I know Teresa's got her hands up, so we'll go to her next. But
okay.
Yeah, so my thought was, I mean, it is an intriguing concept. If it isn't a shopping cart and that is clearly marked with, the owner, in most cases Safeway or maybe the co-op, it does strike me that would be different than if someone has left all their personal belongings piled on the sidewalk. And we have those issues that you've talked about in the past, Chief, where if we take what could be someone's personal belongings, you then are obligated to put it in a climate controlled warehouse where it'll be there held for at least 30 days to give the individual the chance to claim it. But if it's in a shopping cart, I mean, to me, that's no different than if it's in a stolen car. I mean, we respond to stolen cars and have them towed. And to me, a shopping cart would be the same thing. It's a Safeway shopping cart. Clearly somebody stole it. And I wonder if there's a different legal situation where the city could remove the cart. And again, if it's right, as I've observed a few times, in front of the bank next to Naomi's business, I would think that the bank, if they choose to, I mean, the bank has every right to come out there and say, hey, this person has left this stolen shopping cart on our property, our sidewalk, and they could remove it, either take it back to Safeway or put all the belongings in the dumpster if they want to. The city can't do that because we have those other issues where we're required to hold someone's personal belongings, but a private property owner doesn't. I don't believe a private property owner has that same legal obligation to preserve the belongings that someone left and abandoned in front of their shop. Is that right, Chief?
Yeah, that is my understanding, and definitely something that be worthy of exploring. I know in the past we've notified the different individuals who own the carts like Safeway, and they haven't had a big interest in going out and collecting their carts. So that's been one of our challenges. But I agree with you. They're not sold to the public. They're not available. So if they are not in the store's parking lot, that in all likelihood that they have been taken. So. Teresa?
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking of this in the, like Oz said, I mean, like all he could do is ask people to not have carts there. All I can do at the warming center is ask people to not have carts there. And just kind of thinking about this is a great group to think about the underlying systemic issue is that we're talking about people who have nowhere to put their stuff, you know, and I've had some really difficult conversations with people. I mean, I had a guest who was just crying with me because our policy is that you can't leave stuff at the warming center. And currently people can have their stuff at the warming center overnight. And then there's an hour between when they can take their stuff to filling empty bellies. If it's not in a cart, and they can bring it inside. And it's like, you know, I mean, this guy had been kicked out of his housing, and that he was like, I used to have stuff, like I had a toaster and a French press, and now he's condensed all of his belongings to 3 little suitcases, and he's not allowed to have them anywhere. You know, it's a really hard thing to tell someone that, sorry, but that's our policy, you know? So, I mean, I would love to work with someone from the city. I mean, one idea that I had thought of is like, you know, like bike lockers or something. If it's not the city taking things, if it's people voluntarily putting their own stuff away, then it seems like that circumvents the like having to have it in a climate controlled environment. And like, I don't know, we just like people, these are people that are carrying around all their belongings, you know, and they just don't have anywhere to put them. So like if we take their carts and like, you know, or talk to Safeway about it, it's not really addressing that issue. So, you know, I'd love to work with somebody on an actual solution to that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Teresa. Appreciate that. And yeah, I think that might be a good discussion. Have a few people together to maybe see if they can come up with something. I will say that one of our biggest challenges is not so much people's personal possessions, but it's the garbage that's left behind, and that's where we get a lot of calls. And Jonah will tell you probably how much his team's workload has increased. Our public works will tell you how much their workload has increased just picking up. Just in the last couple of days, we've had several calls at the Heritage Square, just bags of stuff that you know, we end up having to clean up. And you know, if we can get people to clean up their own mess, I really do believe that this would reduce some of our calls for service. And so that's our biggest challenge. But it's the other adage too, is, you know, one person's trash is another person's treasures, is we can't always make a determination on what's valuable to somebody. But clearly there's some stuff that's would not be of any value to anybody. And I think we have enough sense to make those calls. But that is a tough challenge for us. And, you know, we've actually been sued by somebody in the past that said that we got rid of their worldly possessions. So we have to kind of tread lightly in that area. But so yeah, let's think a little bit about that and maybe come up with some ideas. Let's see, I saw a hand up or someone. Denise, did I see you were going to ask a question? I know you live right next door there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
So I have to say that it has gotten better down here, but like our furniture we had out front, we had to bring in because we were having the homeless hanging out there. So for the people that come down and have coffee out there, they don't have that anymore because of the problem we had. And as a business owner, I think all we want is clean streets, so people will want to come down and shop at our stores, you know? So however we have to, is the next door, is that gonna be becoming a warming center where they can stay the night now? Is that what I understood?
Do you want to try and answer that as far as your intentions anyway?
Yeah, we're gonna start overnight stays once I'm done installing showers.
So they'll be able to sleep down there also?
Yes.
Oh, so I have a basement down here. I can turn that into apartment and rent it out. Because I didn't think you could do that downtown.
We won't be renting anything. It will be emergency shelter.
Well, I know, but I didn't think that you were able to have people sleep in the building downtown, that there was an ordinance on that.
Denise, I can tell you that they still have to meet all the code requirements as far as fire and life safety. There was a recent legislation that just passed last year that makes it so the cities cannot prohibit those types of activities through zoning. So some of that is legislature enacted.
So, I mean, I'm a business and I have a downstairs. Could I make that into an apartment and rent it out?
Well, I'm not the right one.
So there's,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Denise, as the chief was saying, the state legislature in Salem passed state law, nothing to do with the city. It's a state law that prohibits cities from restricting warming centers from any particular part of town. So anywhere in the city of Astoria, a person can operate a warming center now if they meet all the other requirements for building safety for occupancy. That is straight from the state, and that is the legislation that Lifeboat Services is taking advantage of to be able to make their plans for a building center. And again, they need to be going through the community development department at the city to ensure they meet all the other requirements for habitation in that building.
Right. So what I'm saying is, like Naomi was saying, all we want is clean streets down here so people will come down and shop at our stores. I don't think that's too much to ask. I mean, I have seen the shopping carts have, gone away. For a while they were across the street, but now in the last few days I haven't seen any. So that's good, and I'm glad, that there's being some work done for that. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Well, Denise, I'm glad that you called in today, and we all share your concerns. We all want the streets to be safe, and we also want the streets to have a perception of being safe as well.
And I'm not a heartless person. I think it's a great thing.
I know that
they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And you want your business to be profitable, and you don't want to have customers not come in because of either a reality or perceived safety issues. And so, I think we've heard today from a variety of the different organizations here that, they are making strides.
Yeah,
and
they are.
Lifeboat Services has seen some improvement. So we're just gonna, this isn't something where we flip a switch and solve a problem. It's something where we all keep working together continuously to make incremental change and incremental improvement.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate the work that they've been, working towards and getting it cleaned up out there and, making the rules. That was a good thing. So I'm glad to see all that's happening.
Thank you, Denise. And as a side note, if you'd ask Steve to give me a call, I left a message a while back, just had some thoughts for him as well. So
I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Oz, thank you again for the update. Again, good work. And I always love to hear the success stories. One more person that is impacted is always good news. So thank you. So it's 20 minutes till where we've had obviously a full meeting and a good meeting. So I'm going to press on here. I'm just going to spend a minute on the homeless activity. I haven't brought this up at every meeting, but I do get asked about it. And this is information I've shared to council through our quarterly reports that I do. And interestingly enough, our calls related to homeless activity have gone down in 2021 compared to 2020. And for those that are newer to the group here, about 3 years ago, when we started seeing a spike in homeless related calls through our computer-aided dispatch software, we initiated a code. So if an officer responded to a call involving a homeless individual, we would at least keep count of those. We don't do anything with the data. We don't use that to target or track anybody. It's just simply so we know, is the problem getting better or worse, and what resources we need to put on this. So in, I think it was 2018 or 19, we started tracking the calls. And then a year later, we realized that many of these calls do involve individuals who are very aggressive in their behavior. So we started tracking those calls as well, because those clearly cause more concern for not only our officers, but also for our community in general. So in 2020, we had 786 calls for service related to homeless activity. In 2021, we had 484 calls, which was a 38% reduction. Now, I honestly don't have anything to say why this happened. We could blame it on COVID. We could blame it, credit the good work that we're doing. There are, with statistics, it's always difficult to be able to point to exactly why some of these happen. It could even be that people are just frustrated and they don't feel that we're going to do anything about it anyway, so they're not calling us anymore. So there's any number of reasons, but it does give us, a general sense of, where we're at in the calls. I was actually surprised by the numbers that they are down that much, because I don't feel that they are, based on the calls that I'm receiving, that I'm hearing from, our community and our counselor, that feels very much like this is still a very significant problem. So anyway, that's the calls. The aggressive related calls, those are actually up 50%. Now the numbers overall are relatively small, so a increase like that is less significant. But there was 39 aggressive related calls in 2020 and 59 aggressive related calls in 2021. So 60 calls in a year is somewhat substantial and a significant increase. So anyway, more just as an FYI, nothing we're necessarily doing with that information. And so Gretchen, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that just a little bit. I've been part of I run a office downtown on 9th Street, a tax practice, and my staff refuses to keep the door unlocked because of the people that come into the office. We quit calling because there was nothing done. I had my receptionist threatened when a man fell asleep in our doorway. She tapped on the glass and he came into the office, threatened her, and got a stern talking to. Now, I understand there's not much to be done. However, speaking to the safety, my staff actually feels less safe and refuses to call because nothing is done. So I guess that's partly why I'm here on the call is I see it changing. I don't necessarily see the safety aspect getting better. I see it getting worse. And just from, my staff, they're concerned to walk downtown. And what was spoken to earlier, women don't want to shop downtown. One comment I heard was that women were told to walk in twos. I think that issue needs to be addressed a little bit better. I feel like Property Watch really didn't help me. All they did was, give a stern talking to. There was nothing, and I don't have the answer. I'm not trying to be uncaring, but if somebody falls asleep in my doorway during business hours, how can people and clients get in to use our services?
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, what you're describing is what I suspected may be happening, where people are putting their hands up and just saying, we're not going to do anything anyway, and that's obviously very disheartening to us as a law enforcement agency. And as everybody, at least our membership is very keenly aware of, this is not just a law enforcement problem. This is everybody's problem. This is a social service problem. It's a breakdown of the system. It's a lack of resources, and the list goes on and on. As far as the law enforcement side of things, I'm not going to go into a long dissertation, but I've said this many a times that we don't have a lot of hooks. The jail will not keep individuals there, and for a whole variety of reasons, no fault of theirs, just space is an issue. COVID's another problem. Our sanctions are limited. We issue citations, they don't pay them, it goes to warrant, we take them to jail, they release them on another citation. So it's a revolving door. We need to find creative solutions to deal with this problem that aren't enforcement related. Again, though, I will say that if people are putting their hands up and not calling us, then it's like we don't know what we don't know, and we're not going to respond if people aren't calling us. I will say that there are limited options for us, but if someone's sleeping in your doorway, they're trespassing, we will trespass them. And so we do have ability to take action. Sometimes, with limited resources, we may not get out there as quickly as many people would like, but we will come out. And if you hear that we're not responding or that we didn't respond to your satisfaction, I would encourage you to give me a call personally.
So I have, and part of it was that some of this is a bit ago, where I had a man shooting up right in our doorway as we were coming to work, and all the officer did was pull up, speak to him through the window, never got out of the vehicle, as my entire staff was still in their vehicles. Now that was, a couple of years ago. So, but the main problem is that I agree, there's nothing that they're, you can't take them to jail. We do keep the door locked. I have encouraged my staff to continue to call because I do agree that if it's not reported, then it looks like the numbers are going down. I don't see that from my perspective that they're going down. I just don't think people are calling anymore because the response we got is kind of, well, there's nothing we can do. And when you get that, then you kind of start to think, well, why should I even make the call?
Yeah, and I do understand that. And again, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not surprised by it. I will say that there's nothing we can do. We have limited options, but there are some things we can do. And some of the things you've heard in today's meeting, are some of the hopefully creative solutions that will address some of these problems for the longer term. But again, this is probably part of a bigger conversation.
Right here in the basket, right around the corner there.
I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, sorry. Hey, I agree with Gretchen because I was about ready to give up and say, just forget it. Excuse me, nothing's happening. But then I thought, no, I'm sticking to it. Something needs to be done. And if you guys don't hear it, nobody's going to know. So I just wanted to let you know that I agree with her. People just get frustrated. It's like, forget it.
I understand that.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know.
I appreciate that. Mayor, were you going to chime in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and to Ms. Allen, I want to thank you for calling today, and I'm very sorry for the stress your staff has been suffering for these several years and continues to. And I would, as frustrating as it might be to continue calling, I would ask you to please do continue calling every time there's a situation, because those calls enable a couple of things. First, it helps with some of these organizations, including the police, possibly getting the resources to be able to do even more. But secondly, and I don't know if you were on the call earlier when Chief Spalding mentioned, there's a program now to identify the frequent flyers, the people that are generating most of the calls, and specifically target them, identify them, approach them, try to find out their specific issue. And is there anything we can do with that individual person who's causing so much of the problem to get them so that they're no longer causing problems? And particularly with any type of, if your staff have been confronted with aggressive behavior, threatening behavior, things that were said that made them feel unsafe, it's really important that the police, in addition to targeting those people that have had the most calls, that they are able to target the individuals who have been threatening, making threatening contact with the public, and target those individuals for some sort of intervention to try to get them off the street and away from that threatening behavior. And the only way we can do that is if it's documented. So I would ask that you do continue to encourage your staff to call.
Yeah. I do continue. I work remotely a lot more, so I'm not there every day like I used to be a couple of years ago. But I do encourage them. Every instance, however, the police already knew it, and they just said, "Oh, there wasn't." In fact, it was more, "Well, we saw him down the street. We're sorry he said that to you. He's sorry. Do you want him to come apologize?" At one, I said, "No, I don't want him back in the office." I mean, I don't have the answer. I understand that there's a lot of complexities. I will say one thing, what I came on to see too was the collaboration, because I don't think this is just a city problem. This is a state problem. This is a county problem. It is bigger than just the city of Astoria. So I guess that's kind of where I am grateful you guys are doing this, and I am grateful to hear some of the stuff that I have heard, because I was a bit unaware, and to protect my staff, I feel a duty to them. What do I do? Do we just lock the door and by appointment only? Reasonable either. So yeah, and we'll see how it shapes up. I don't have the answer, like I said.
Yeah, and Gretchen, we're still working on trying to find the right answers too. Feel free to call me offline, and I'd be more than happy to chat with you in more detail about this. The last thing I will say to you and anybody listening is don't forget to reach out to your legislators as well. They're the ones that ultimately make decisions in terms of what laws will be created. Some recently have tied our hands on dealing with some of the issues that we get calls on. But they need to hear from both sides, whether there's the frustrations or that we're overstepping our bounds. So don't forget that as an option as well.
Well, and I have, and I kept getting, well, it's the Boise case. It's the Boise case. So I pulled the Boise case and I looked at it. And what I saw, and partly why I'm on this call, yeah, they cite the Boise case, but they do not actually offer the beds that Boise did. However, I do believe we have some complications, as our laws are a little different than Idaho's in how they approach drug abuse, or even possession of drugs. So I don't know that it can all be handled, but I am glad to see that some of those things are starting to happen. Hopefully it happens fast enough before our downtown dies, and businesses leave. That's really the main concern.
Yeah, Gretchen, I think to be continued. We have to be respectful of the meeting time here. We're
Sorry.
out of time, so feel free to call me. I'm more than happy to chat with you about this. So at this point, I'd like to move to our member roundtable. So it's an opportunity for members of the host task force. If you would like to share anything, I'm not going to go around necessarily to each name. Please raise your hand. Jonah, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly update this group that our parks maintenance supervisor will be reaching out to a few of the different organizations in the downtown area. They're going to be doing some renovations at the downtown restrooms in February 7th, starting then through that following week. I believe they're trying to wrap everything up by the 16th, but those restrooms will be closed during that time. So I wanted to provide some advance notice there and just make sure everyone was aware. Matt should be reaching out, and we will be getting some porta potties to serve as a temporary public restroom during that time as well. So if you've got any questions, you can definitely reach out to me at the Parks Department, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Jerome?
Just wanted to respond to Gretchen with a thank you, and I'm going to send in the chat just contact information for the homeless liaison team in case you don't have that already. I know we're not really equipped to handle violent situations, but our team does have relationships with most of the unhoused community and can often come out and help in ways that may yeah, obviously it's a bigger situation than anybody can just make go away, but that is why we're here too. And if you're not getting response from the police, like, we are more than happy to come out and try to communicate and clear people out. And if you're not able to be safe getting in and out of your office, that's awful. And call us too. And we're partners that are all over the county. So it may take a little bit of time to get to you, but sometimes we can be there quick. And I just want to make sure that you reach out to us as well. That's all.
Thank you, Jerome. I appreciate that. Teresa.
Hey, I just wanted to give everybody a quick update that the warming center is going to move to being open consecutive days sometime next week. We've been closed for most of the last 2 weeks, which is a little fortuitous for us given the COVID situation. Yeah, so we'll be sending out, I think most of you guys are on our announcements anyway, but we'll be sending out a final announcement to let you know that we'll just be open until mid-March, which hopefully Lifeboat will be open then and we can just have a seamless transition. But we don't have anywhere to quarantine people that have COVID. So we are going to use some of our OHA wraparound money to get some hotel rooms. And I've contacted CCA about that. So yeah, if you're an organization that does wraparound referrals, yeah, you can call me directly. I'll put my email in the chat. But yeah, that's my update.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Teresa. And as a reminder for at least our membership anyway, all the emails, phone numbers, and name is all on the roster, which I send out from time to time whenever they're updated. So if there's no other member comments, I will open it up to our guests on the meeting. Please raise your hand and I'd be more than happy to recognize you. Okay, seeing none, it looks like we did such a good job answering all your questions. So with that being said, next meeting, we are right now slated for March 24th. We've been pretty much on a 2-month cycle. I think that seems to be working. We have full meetings and I think we're being productive. As many of you know, I'm had announced my third retirement coming up last month. I have also agreed to the mayor and the city manager that I'm more than happy to stick around until they find my replacement. That will be tough shoes to fill, so I think that's going to take some time. But with that being said, I have a vested interest in this department and in this city, and I'm very anxious to help the new person on board, the new person when he or she gets here. So my attendance at the next meeting is somewhat tentative. I believe it'll take a good 2 months before we see someone on board. Either way, my intention is to sign in and see all of your smiling faces at that meeting, whether I'm your former chief or new chief. I will say that we've been doing this for a little over 4 years now. There's been criticism over the years about how much we are not accomplishing. But I think that is displaced criticism. I think we've done some really good work. I'm proud of what we've done. Again, I don't want to beat this dead horse, but the relationships, to me, if that's all we accomplished, that's been worth it for me. I will say in the last few meetings we've had, I really feel a lot of renewed interest, a lot of renewed energy, and I really think there's some good things happening. And I'm really proud of the work that everybody's doing, members and guests and community alike. So with that being said, Mayor, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I want to thank everyone for a very productive meeting and for all your continued work. And we do look forward to seeing Chief Spalding one final time at the March meeting, where we can properly thank him for his years as the coordinator of this organization and for all the work he does as police chief with situations involving homelessness. And it's always good, I think, for us to just hear the reports from the different organizations that are our members, to hear all the good things that are happening. You know, an image came to my mind recently, which is that with the situation with our homeless issues, it's sort of like we're all in a ship together, and the ship has a bunch of leaks, water's pouring in, and all of you are working extremely hard, plugging the holes and pumping the water out. And we're all looking at it and we can say, you know, we're actually making pretty good progress, but we haven't fixed it yet, but we're making progress. So we can be proud of the work we've done. If you just come aboard that ship and all you see is water in the bottom of the hold, you might say, oh my God, the ship's filling up with water, we're sinking. But you don't see the fact that people have been working around the clock, plugging those holes and pumping water out. And, you know, it's not something that you fix immediately. It's an ongoing problem because it's a national problem, and it manifests itself in every community in America, including our community. And I'm just thankful for all of you on this call for all the work that you do. And one of the things I'm taking away from my couple pages of notes from today's meeting is that idea of a place to store belongings that Teresa and a few others mentioned. I think it's a great idea. I think if and I don't know what the solution is or who should host it, but if there's a way to identify some sort of unit, shipping containers or whatever, in which 100 lockers could be put with locks, and people could be provided that as an option. And, you know, someone has their pile of belongings on the sidewalk in front of a business. We say, look, here's where the locker is. You can take your stuff to the locker. And because we've offered you that option, if you refuse to take it, we're going to throw it in the dumpster. And, you know, give people a place to safely store their belongings and not create the eyesore that the belongings create on the streets. I think that's something that ought to be achievable. So the folks that are interested in that, you know, let's communicate and figure out. And there's probably a model somewhere, I'm guessing. Teresa, have you heard of a model somewhere else, maybe where they're doing this? There's got to be something out there. Anyway, we can look into it and we can talk between now and the next meeting. So thank you all again for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you on Zoom in 2 months.
See y'all later. Be safe, be healthy. Take care.
Take care.